Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining this talk about the gameplay ability system. My name is Shikang. I work at Epic Games in the technical developer relations team, and my day-to-day consists of answering studios their questions about gameplay systems, investigating their bugs, submitting engine fixes, and also posting articles to EDC about how to get the most out of stuff like gas and character movement and out of blueprints. Now I'm here because I want to show some examples of how you can use gas as a designer after you've gone through the initial setup with code to set up gas in your project. Now, gas is a framework that really helps you to develop your gameplay content in a modular and data-driven way. Now, those are some often used buzzwords, so I'm going to show you how this can be done to make your gameplay modular. It's useful for both single-player and multiplayer games, and it's used in all of Epic's games as well as many of your games. It's a plugin that you can enable in the editor by enabling the gameplay abilities plugin. Now, some things we hear about gas is that it has some fans, so people that will use gas in each of the new projects, but also people that don't use gas, didn't use gas before, but then find out that they run into issues and needs that gas would have solved for them. But we also hear some people that find gas quite intimidating to learn, or they think it's too complex to set up for their simple game. Now, I want to remedy those last two conceptions of gas. I already started by posting some articles earlier this year, like your first 60 minutes with gas, best practice for setup, and how to debug your gas attributes and settings and state in-game. So you can find these articles on EC. And I also recommend checking out the Lyra starter game because it contains many examples of good practices of using gas in your project. Now, on the agenda for today is I want to go over the building blocks of gas in a really high-level way, so that even if you didn't use it before, you can follow along with the rest of the presentation. And then I'm going to run through a demo that I prepared where I use gas to implement the talent tree. So first, the building blocks. I'm going to go through this really fast because I want to have more time for the demo. So gas contains gameplay attributes and tags. And attributes are used to manage your numbers. Tags are used to manage your character state, is your character alive or dead, slowed, stunned, silenced, and so on. But also for assigning categories to your assets, like is a buff a fire buff? Is it a fire damage type? Is it a slow effect? Is it a freeze effect? It can also be used to send signals between systems and to use a tag to represent what kind of signal it is. Now, gameplay effects are really to define which attributes and which tags to apply to an actor. So what to do with an actor. It can also be running some logic, like your damage logic. And then there's abilities, which really define when something should happen. So when do I apply a gameplay effect to an actor, or when do I trigger something else? It can be when you press a button, but it can also be driven by animation timing or when something else happens in gameplay. You might wonder, why would I use attributes and tags to manage my numbers and my booleans and enums when I could just create those properties myself? Well, if you use attributes and tags, a lot of stuff comes for free, like convenient authoring of gas, like interactive assets in gas, but also listening for changes to attributes and to tags, as well as integration to the gameplay debugger. So you can use the Unreal's gameplay debugger to check for your character or for any character in the world at any time, what their attributes and tags are. You can build all this yourself, but it's just a lot of effort. And why would you if you can also get it for free? Gameplay effects, as I mentioned, can be used to define what to do to an actor. And some of the use cases are how to change someone's attributes as you equip or unequip items, or if you put points into a talent. You can also use it to affect another actor, for example, to apply damage. And a gameplay effect can also give an ability, which might sound niche, but it's very useful, as we'll see later on. Now, abilities we tend to think of as something that triggers when you press a button, but it can also be used to react to other things happening in gameplay. We really love this approach in Fortnite, because in Fortnite we have thousands of ability blueprints, and you might think, well, there's not thousands of buttons on the keyboard, but it's because we use abilities to react to a lot of other things happening in the world. Now, I'm going to run through this demo, and I'm going to skip over a lot of the basic stuff because I want to get to the fun, creative part. I want to show you what comes after the hump of that initial setup. So if there are parts where you think oh, I don't know how he exactly did that, just be aware that I go through this in these EDC articles, and yeah, you can follow those articles later if you want to catch up on these topics. But I'm really gonna breeze through this because I want to focus on the creative part. I also have published an article online with some technical notes about this demo here, because I really wanted to focus on the blueprint editor workflow, blueprint only workflow once you have the code set up. And here I'm in this article I've posted most of the code snippets that are used in this project. So now I'm going to switch to this demo. I'm going to show you how I'm going to implement some talent in the talent tree in the next like 45 minutes. So I have a demo set up here where I have my character. I can walk around. There are some basic abilities hooked up already. So I can use this chill spell to slow someone down. I can use this fire spell to put someone on fire, and that stacks for burn damage. And lightning spell here that I can use to zap someone. I also have another spell here that's physical librarian strike. I call this a librarian strike, but actually just hitting someone with a book really hard. Now this thing doesn't do anything yet, so I'm going to implement this. What I want to do is play an animation, and when I hit someone with my book, then that person takes damage. Oh, pressed F1 there. So the first thing I want to do is I'll create a new folder for my talent blueprints. Oh, actually, here it is already, talent examples. So I want to apply damage once I hit an actor. So what I'll do is I'll create a gameplay effect to apply the damage. I'll call that GE damage physical melee. And how most game projects that I've seen, so including Lyra, Fortnite, and user projects, what I've seen is that they set up damage in this way, where they specify an execution, which is just a piece of logic that runs when this gameplay effect gets applied. So here I have my damage execution class. And what that logic expects is a damage number. So I can supply that on modifiers. And I'll set that this attribute to ability damage, which is a meta attribute. And a meta attribute just means this isn't an attribute that's always on a character, but it's just a temporary value used for calculation. I'll set that to 50, so I'm going to apply 50 damage to whatever I'm hitting. I've also set up this damage function so that I expect the damage type. So under components here, what I can do is I can supply some asset tags. And an asset tag means it's a tag that defines that gives some information about this current asset, so this gameplay effect. What I'll do here is I'll define this as physical damage. And that's it. Now, both of these values here, these tags and this modifier, will be read out by my damage function. And if you want to see the damage function, there is it's discussed in my best practice for setup EDC article. But if you want to look at a better damage function, you can also look at Lyra, which more closely matches Fortnite's implementation. Now I want to see if this works in game. So what I'm going to do is, in my character blueprint, I created a clean subclass here. On my debug key, I'm going to grab a reference to my ability system component, call apply gameplay effect to self. Select my GE melee damage, GE damage melee physical, and just jump in game. Press V and you see it's working. Ouch, ouch, ouch. So this is working, right? So now I don't want to damage myself, right? I want to damage my enemies. So what I'll do now is I'll go to my I'll create a new gameplay ability, or I made one here already, physical melee, and this is granted by my pickup. I configured an icon here, but for the rest, this does nothing yet. What I want to do is play an animation. So in the gameplay ability, you can call play montage and wait. And I created a montage beforehand, melee attack here. But all it does right now is just play an animation with some root motion, so that root motion is applied to my character when I trigger this, but there's no logic here yet. But what I want it to do is that when I reach a certain point in this animation, like this beautiful frame right here, Then I want to evaluate what's near my hand or the book I'm carrying, and then apply to damage to an actor, whichever is touching the book. Now, I know that the animation system has this beautiful system called notifies, which I can use to trigger something in a frame, but this does not, or Gas doesn't hook up to that out of the box. But it's quite simple to make something like that yourself. Because in Gas, in a gameplay ability blueprint, what you can do is wait for a gameplay event to happen. And that event has an identifier, namely this event tag. Now, I made a tag beforehand, so I'm going to select that one here, abilities of timing.melee frame. And now this execution pin here will fire whenever some external system is going to send the event with that tag to my actor. Now, to hook that up to my anim montage, what I'll do is I'll create my custom anim notify class, a blueprint that inherits from anim notify. I'll call it anim notify _ send gameplay event. And here I can add some blueprint logic that executes when this notify is hit in the montage. So what I'll do here is grab my skeletal mesh, the one that's playing the animation, grab its owner, which is the character mesh, and then call send gameplay event to that actor. And I could just specify melee damage, melee frame right here, but instead I want this to be reusable, so I'll promote this to a variable called event tag here, and I'll make this public so that I can edit it in any montage. Now back in this melee montage, I'll go to this notifies frame track here, add my custom notify class, click it, and then now I can select which tag it fires, and that's going to be my abilities.timing.melee frame. Now what happens is when my ability places montage, is going to hit this frame. That's going to send an event to my character, which will be forwarded to my ability here. And then this pin here, this execution pin, executes. And now what I can do is to look at actors that are close to my hand. But first I want to show you that this animation here works. So I'll go in-game. I'll equip I click this pickup, and all this pickup does is call give ability on my ability system component, and give me that ability that I just created. So playing this animation now works. When I go back to my physical ability, one thing I forgot is that you can't retrigger an ability until it has ended. So on the animation completing, I'll call end ability. Now I want to know what's close to my hand, and then play, or close to my book, and then apply damage to it. So what I'll do is I'll get my skeletal mesh component from the character that owns this ability, get socket location, and I know I call that socket hand _ L socket. I'll just do a simple sphere overlap actors. Look at anything that's close to my hand. I want to be quite lenient here because I'm pretty bad at aiming. And I'm only interested in pawns, so I'll do that. I also don't want to hit myself with the book, so I'm going to add myself to actors to ignore. So I'll get the avatar actor from actor info, which just means the character that owns this ability and its representation in this world. So ignore that, and for the remaining actors, I will apply a gameplay effect to it, to the target. Now in Gas, you can supply targets in multiple ways, including actor references, but also locations. So it expects this target data. So I'll just create target data from actor here. Supply that, and hook this up. Now let's see if this works in-game. So click the pickup, which gives me that ability. I can play it, and then when I line this up it's not working right now. So let's see what's the issue there. Physical melee. This one you mean? No, this is no problem. To targets. Oh, thank you, thank you. Damage physical melee. So equip this. Great, now this works. All right. Now let's move on to our next thing. I have a talent tree here. We have a couple of talents, like I can increase someone's, can increase my fire damage, so just stat based. And here's a more interesting one. If I apply a 5th chill stack, then I want to freeze the target. But then when the target is frozen, I want to shatter it if I then hit it with physical damage. So like when I hit it with my book, then it gets shattered. And if we have time, I'll also get into chain lightning here. So how I've set up this talent tree is that every talent is defined in a data asset, like this one here. So I already have these like hooked up to my UI, and I can put points into this. And then whenever I put a point into this, all my talent system does is to give me a gameplay effect, or it gives me an ability. And I'm going to make use of reactive abilities a lot. So abilities that auto-activate and then wait for something else to happen in gameplay. So first I'll create this ability called, I'm going to use my ability subclass, lab gameplay ability, because that one is visible in the UI. I'll call this GA reaction cold freeze. I have a Boolean here to auto-activate an ability, and all this does is that in my class here, my custom ability system component, when the ability is granted, it just checks if it's my subclass, and if that Boolean is true, I just give it right away. So this is an approach that's also used in Fortnite in the Lyra as well. But although this approach here with this Boolean only works for single player, if you want a multiplayer approach, check out the Lyra implementation. So going back to my ability, what I want to do here is I'm going to wait for my actor to apply a gameplay effect to some target. And then I want to check if that gameplay effect has a certain tag or not. I want to check for the chill effect. So if I quickly peek at my slow debuff, here I've given it the asset tags cold and cold damage type and effect type slow. And the asset tag here is a tag that describes something about this gameplay effect. The other one type of tag you have is target tags, which is something that you apply to the actor that you're applying this gameplay effect to. But here we're looking at the asset tags. So at this point, I needed to create a utility function because these handles here don't really allow you to inspect the gameplay effects. But what I've created is this util function to get the gameplay effects default object from the spec. And because I have to jump into C++ here, it might sound a bit intimidating to people that are blueprint only, but I just want to show you the implementation. It's just one line of code. So even if you can't code, type this over or ask your programmer friend to do this. It's not that complex, but we are still working on making Gas a bit more like blueprint only friendly. Now, when I have this gameplay effect object, what I can do is I can grab the properties that are defined on this class here. So I can check its tags, for example. I'm going to see if it has all tags that are defined in this thing. I'll make a tag container. And I'm going to look at effects that's slow and are cold type. Now I'm going to pause here because I'm also going to create a frozen debuff first. Remember that gameplay effects are what to do to an actor and gameplay abilities are when. So I'll go to my talent example. I'll create a blueprint class type lab gameplay effects. This subclass here is primarily because it has an icon that I can show in my UI. So I'm going to name it GE debuff cold frozen. Now this thing I want to give a duration. So I'm going to set the duration policy to has duration and set it to 15 seconds. I'm going to give it both some asset tags and some target tags. So in terms of asset tags, I'm going to give some tags to describe this thing. It's also cold type. It's also a freeze effect. And then in terms of target tags, I'm going to give it the frozen character.state.frozen. And the reason I give this target tag is because in my character blueprint, I set up a bespoke visual for while the actor is frozen. I also want the frozen effect to take away my movement speed. So I made an attribute that's the function as a speed multiplier to my character movement component. I'm going to override that to be 0. Now, let me quickly test if this gameplay effect works as I intended. So I'll jump in game. I could use a debug key for this like before, but instead I can also use a console command, which is quite useful. You have ability system.effects.apply. And if I type in the name of that debuff I just created, you see it's working. I have this default icon because I forgot to set it. And I have this beautiful material overlay on my character, and I can't move right now. By the way, shout out to my friend Arnich from the Barn Games for helping me with some of these visuals. So now I can try to apply this when I have this 5th chill stack on a target. So one thing I also have to mention here is that by default in a new Unreal Engine project, when I call this on a gameplay effect, it's going to look at the target tags. But generally, we found it more useful to look at the asset tags instead. So what you can do is, like all good things in life, things are hidden by a cvar. Under your default engine.ini, and then under console variables, you can set this cvar ability system.fix.gameplay effects that return asset tags via get own gameplay tags to 0. This is the value we use in Fortnite. It's also the value we prefer, but since it has worked as returning target tags for so long, we didn't just want to change it and like rug pull people's existing projects. So with that said, I can check I can check the gameplay effects asset tags, and if it's that slow effect, then I can take this active handle, which is used to access information about the gameplay effect as it's applied to the target. I can use this to get the stack count. Sometimes this auto-connect is not so great. Okay. And if the stack count is equal or greater than 5, then I'm going to apply that debuff to my targets. So grab this target reference all the way over here. Make target data from this. And then hook this up. And here I'm going to not forget the gameplay effect class this time, called frozen. Now let's see if this works. It won't because I haven't hooked it up to my talents yet. So under my talent definition, I'm going to open my data assets and define that when I put a point into this talent, so when I click that button, it's just going to give me that reactive ability to check to freeze someone, which will then listen for me applying debuffs. So let me double check if that works. So I'll put a point into freeze here. Then I'll use my gameplay debugger. So with shift apostrophe, I can open the gameplay debugger, and then I can check which abilities are active, which are abilities I have right now, and which are activated. So here I see reaction, cold, freeze as blue. So that means that ability is on me and it's active. So it's listening for me to apply gameplay effects right now. You can also use this to check your own tags, any gameplay effect on you, and any stats on you. And if you want to inspect any other character in the world, with the gameplay debug open, you can line up some character with like in the middle of your screen, and also hold apostrophe to check out its state instead. So now I have my chill spell. I'll try to apply this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you see this stupid icon appears again, which you need to replace in a bit. But you see that it's working, and it's also appearing as frozen. So this debuff now is working. Let me quickly go to that debuff, and I'll give this a prettier icon instead. It's a debuff. And freeze on. Also, shout out to my wonderful partner, Sylvia, for providing these graphics. Otherwise, you guys would have been looking at my paint art. So the next talent I want to show is that when you hit a frozen target with physical damage, it's going to shatter. So I'll start the same way. I'm going to create a, let me save everything. I'm going to create a reactive gameplay ability. I'll just copy the frozen, the other one now, because the start is going to be the same. Cold shatter. Actually, listen to apply shatterable. Now, how I want this talent to work is that when I freeze a target, then any physical damage will shatter it. So what I want to put on the target is a reactive ability on the target. So it's not just something listening to me, but something listening on the target instead. So the start is going to be the same. I'm going to listen for me applying a debuff to the target. But in this case, the debuff is going to be a freeze effect. Let me quickly check if I did add that freeze effect here. Yeah, so I'm going to look for this type of gameplay effect. And then I'm going to, like, no need to check for stack count here. I'm going to apply a gameplay effect to the targets. Target data from actor. Let's apply that. Now, before I forget, I'm going to do this at the start. In my talent definition for shatter, I'll grant that gameplay effect, that gameplay ability. Listen to apply shatterable. And now I need to create a debuff for this thing. Now, I want to apply a debuff gameplay effect so that I can see on top of the character that it's applied. But I also want to put this reactionary ability on the target to listen for incoming physical damage. So what I'll do now is I'll create both, but I'll let the ability be given by the debuff, so I don't have to do two actions. First things first, I'm going to create the lab gameplay ability, GA reaction listen to shatter, the one on the target. I'll create a debuff GE debuff called shatterable, which is applied on the target. And now in this thing, I can add a component that grants gameplay ability. So as long as this effect is on the target will have that ability, which also can be a negative effect. So here on the grant abilities, I'll select my GA reaction, listen to shatter. Now this debuff, I want to be active on the target as long as the frozen effect is also active. So what I can do is I can tie those lifetimes together. So first of all, this thing doesn't have like a predetermined duration, so I'll set it to infinite, which means infinite until removed. And now on the components, what I can do is I can wait, or I can let this gameplay effect have some requirements to stay on the actor. And on the removal tag requirements here, I can specify like when this thing gets removed. You should read this as to remove some actor must have, or to remove this actor must not have. Well, if the thing doesn't have the frozen state anymore, then this gameplay effect will be removed. And when this gameplay effect is removed, it will also remove any abilities granted this way. Here I'll set this as debuffs, so that In my UI, it's going to have a red border. And this time I'm going to select the icon right away. Like that. And then, let's see, when I apply freeze to a target, then I'm also going to apply that shatterable debuff. But then let me close a couple of screens here. And open the shatter, listen to shatter reaction. So here we're going to listen for that incoming physical damage. But first, let's test if things work so far. So I'll start a game here. I'll put a point into freeze, I'll put a point into shatter, equip a chill spell, debuff this 5 times. Things are being applied double, but we'll fix that in a bit. But you see that this debuff is being applied because I have this visual. But if you don't have the visual hooked up, then opening your gameplay debugger and targeting that other actor by holding apostrophe is a great way to check that. Oh, all these buttons. Okay. Now here I'm going to do the same thing again, but then because this reaction is applied on the target, I'm going to wait for a gameplay event to be applied to me, the target. Use my utility function again to get the gameplay effects. Remember that the article on EDC is also named Gameplay Abilities for Designers, Unreal Fest Bali. You can check out the code snippets there. And if that incoming effect has a physical damage type, then I want to apply some mega damage to my targets. So what I'll do now is I'll just duplicate my physical melee because that's set up already. Physical shatter damage, and I'll increase this to 9999. No, beautiful Super Nintendo era numbers, and apply that damage to my targets. No, not apply damage. Never use the old actor apply damage function. Apply gameplay effects to my targets. Oh wait, we are on the targets in the targets ability, so I can just call apply gameplay effect to myself, to the owner of this ability. Now, something I also want to do is add another tag to my owner to trigger the visual for shatter that I've already hooked up. Now, you can only apply a tag from a gameplay effect that has duration, but what you can also do is just add a loose tag on an actor. So here I'll grab a reference to my character class. I'll call this add loose gameplay tag function to my character. Internally, this will resolve the ability system component. And the tag I want to add is from one tag. I want make gameplay tag container from one tag. I want to add game character.state.shatters. Now that's a long sequence of events, so let me recap this closely. When I put a point in the shatter, I get this reactionary gameplay effect, gameplay ability that listens for me to applying froze. That listens for me applying freeze to something, then applies a debuff to my targets, shatterable. Then that debuff grants a gameplay effect to that gives a gameplay ability to my target, and that ability waits for incoming damage. So that waits for incoming damage of type physical, and then I'm applying this massive damage effect. I'm adding this tag to the actor. So let's see if all of this works. I'll cast this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Freeze. Of course, I do need to put point into my talent. Freeze triggers, shatterable triggers. Let me equip this book. And then try and hit it. This does not go well. So let's use the gameplay debugger again to check out what's going wrong here. Wait, I know it has the shatterable gameplay ability reaction. Look, this thing is yellow. It means it's not active yet. I forgot to check the auto activate boolean. Listen to shatter, and then click this to auto activate. Now let's try again. The gameplay debugger is wonderful, people. Use it. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Frozen, shatter. Bam. All right, now we have 14 minutes left, so I'm going to do a lightning round here. A literal lightning round. I'm going to implement chain lightning. So the way this works here, my talent system, is that the more points I put into chain lightning, the higher the ability level is. I'm going to make use of that. This one is going to be less gas interaction, but more like more blueprint logic. But it's a fun one to implement, so I want to show this. I'll create a reactionary gameplay ability, GA reaction lightning chain. Auto activate. Wait for me to apply some gameplay effect to a target. Get the gameplay effects from the spec. And then check its owning. Check it if it has a lightning damage tag. If that's the case, then I'm going to start my sequence of events. Now, before I forget, I'm going to go to my talent definition, chain lightning, and then I'm going to give it this reactive ability. So now, when I apply lightning damage to someone, that's what I detect here. The more points I put into the talent, the more targets I want to hit. So what I can do here is, I know my talent system has given me 5 points if I put 5, or ability level 5, if I put 5 points into it. So I'll get the ability level. I'll use that to initialize my number of targets remaining. I'm also going to keep track of which actors I've hit. And those actors I will ignore from now on. Make this an array. And I'll initialize that list by adding 2 characters to it. The first one is my target. The second one, who is it going to be? Does anyone know? Yourself, yes. You don't want to zap yourself. In this case, we're in the ability blueprint, so of course we want to add a reference to our character. I'm also going to keep track of the character that I hit last. You can also grab the last element of your array, but this makes it a bit more readable. Then I'm going to wait a bit because I know that the chain lightning visual has a bit of a delay. Like my initial chain lightning visual has a bit of a delay, and then I'm going to chain to my next targets. Now, before we do too much, I want to check if my ability is hooked up in game. So I'm going to hop in game, put some points into chain lightning, check with the gameplay debugger, shift apostrophe, and okay, this reactive gameplay ability is set up correctly. So it's good so far. And let's get back to implementing it. I know the lightning effect plays in about like 0.4 seconds. And from that point on, I'm going to change to next target. I know that the starting value of my num targets will be more than more than 0, because I wouldn't have this ability otherwise. So then I'm going to change to the next target. What I want to do is find any target that's close to my last target. Now, I made a utility function for this because I wasn't sure if I would have time to implement this otherwise. But all this thing does is it gets a reference actor, a list of actors to ignore. Here I'm doing something quick and dirty, just grabbing all the characters in the world, shuffling them, and then go through each of them. And the first one that is close enough to my reference actor, I'm also using distance here. Of course, you would use distance squared because you're all smart. The first one that's close enough is also alive and is not in my in my ignored actors list. I will return, and otherwise it's going to be null. I'm returning. So I'll pass in my last target here, the ignored actors. Now this thing can be null, so let's validate it first. Let's check if it's null or not. Is valid. If it's not valid, we will also do something later, but I'll get back to that. If it is valid, then I'm gonna, I have a actor, like a visual actor setup that spawns like a lightning effect with Niagara over over a spline. This isn't the VFX talk, so I won't show that, but I'll just spawn an actor of that class. Lightning visual lightning effect. And then I have a function here set up between actors. I'm just going to pass like the new target to as actor 2 here, and my last target as actor 1. And all this does is modify that spline that the Niagara system spawns over. Then I'm going to wait a bit because I know that visual has some time to travel. I want things to look really cool. And then when that's finished, I will apply damage to that actor. Now, any pins here before this delay might be invalidated. So you have to cache that last actor. You can't just connect to any pins from this part of the graph here. So I'll take whatever new target I found, and set it as last target. And now when this delay has passed, then I'm going to apply damage to that target. By the way, the reason why I'm using a wait delay node here, which is gameplay ability specific, is because when the ability gets removed, then this would get interrupted. If you would use a normal delay node, then that's not the case. So apply gameplay effects to targets. Target data from actor. And let's create a custom lightning-based damage effect for this thing here. Now, in the original lightning damage, I added a special tag so that we can also listen for, we can check that tag as well, because I don't want my chain lightning to trigger chain lightning. So let me fix something that I forgot before. Here, I want to check not just for lightning tag, but I want to check for both the lightning tag and that chain starts tag. And only that initial lightning strike will trigger chain lightning. Getting back to here, I'm going to apply that lightning damage, which doesn't have that tag. And to close this off. I also don't want this thing to be running in parallel multiple times because we have some state here. So I'll let this only happen once and only again when it has finished. So I'll create this custom event here, this function called chain lightning finished. Here I will clear out my ignored actors list because it has to be empty for the next iteration to work correctly again. There are two reasons right now for our chain lightning to finish. Either because it couldn't find a target, or because we ran out of targets. Let me not forget to add that last target to the ignored actor list, because otherwise the chain lightning would ping pong, which would be really mean. Now here I'm going to, like after damaging that actor, I'm going to decrement my number of targets remaining. And if that is, like only if that is still positive, if I still have targets remaining, then I'm going to chain to the next targets. Otherwise, we finished. So that closes the loop. Every scenario here will lead to some new thing. Okay. Now the exciting part, does this all work? Because we did a lot of programming without testing. And it's a live demo, so no risk at all. Let's see. Lightning strike, I'll put points into chain lightning. Try to hit this. Oh, fancy. All right, we're almost at time, but this was everything I wanted to show you. Now, I said before that Gas is a way to set up your abilities in a modular and data-driven way. Now, here I had some basic abilities, but I didn't have to revisit those ability blueprints or those gameplay effects to add new stuff to it. And this is really why Gas is powerful. I don't have this chill effect that if it also has this frozen. If you have the frozen talent, then does something extra, and then if you have this shatter talent, does something extra. I don't have to this huge complex blueprint. I was able to create this with multiple assets that interact with each other through those gameplay ability tags or gameplay tags. So I hope I've convinced you that Gas is really powerful, and that if you set things up initially with some nice utility functions, then you as a gameplay designer, as an ability designer, can make all of this with just blueprint. And I hope the building blocks that I showed you, that I explained before, also made sense. And I hope that you enjoyed this talk. Thank you. I see we have 1.5 minutes left for questions. Any questions right now?
Hi, I see you implemented damage as different gameplay effects. Would you recommend, if you're starting building a game now, doing all of your damage instances that you can possibly apply as a different class?
Do you mean as different gameplay effect classes?
Yeah, so you had your shatter dealing 999 damage or whatever. For every different amount of damage or type of damage you can deal, you'd have a different class?
No. So the thing I would recommend first is to have a base gameplay effect blueprint where you configure the damage execution class and maybe a default value already. But in general, what you would do is you can also have a reusable gameplay effect. Damage gameplay effect, if I'll take this one. And instead of hard coding this this value here, I would use set by caller values. And what this allows you to do is in a blueprint, something like here, instead of calling this simple apply gameplay effect to target function, you can call apply gameplay effect spec to target. Then what you would do is make gameplay effect spec, What gameplay effect spec is just like a class, but then with some additional information. So here I can supply my GE, damage, whatever I just had selected. Lightning chain, I believe, I'm not sure. And then call this assign set by color magnitude, and there supply some value. And how the gameplay effect will find this value is because you have to set some tag. Like here I have this ability.parameters.damage tag. If I go back to my GE class, here on the set by color magnitude in modifiers, I can specify the same tag. And that's how you would make a GE class reusable, but let at runtime supply that value. You would also use this if you want to generate random stats for your items, like if you're working on Looter Shooter and you want to randomize your stats. Great question, thank you. All right, I'm out of time, so thank you very much. If you want to talk more, then I'll be at the dev launch.